Welcome to Field Sports Britain. I'm Mark Gilchrist. Coming up, crop rotation. Dom's after deer and I'm after rabbits.
We've returned to farmland where we know there's a deer problem. The last time we were here with sporting shooter editor Dom Holtham, a couple of roebuck were clear in our sights, but they were out of season. Not anymore. Fallow and roebuck are now both fair game, but the farmer would rather we hit the fallow first.
Well, we're back at the farm that we were the other week when we've been pigeon shooting with Andy. We didn't have a lot of joy then. We saw a couple of roebucks which are in season now, so that might tip the odds in our favour. But what we're really after, what Andy wants, Colin, is fallow prickets. So we're going to head off and we're going to walk and stalk instead of sitting in the high seat. We're going to work our way up the wynd, up towards the very top of the farm. There's another high seat up there, so we'll see if we can see anything on the way, and if not, then we'll sit up for the last half hour of light in the high seat and see if we have any joy.
On our travels we come across a land where high seats come to die, but there's no clear sign of deer, just a few hints. There are some D roads crisscrossing the wood. As we cross a stream, we're sure we spook a group of fallow in a dip. A place to remember. It could be a future hotspot.
Just bumped a group of deer, not like three, just hiding in a bit of a hollow in the ground, and they obviously saw me before I saw them. And they've gone, they're the wrong side of the wind for us to go after, so put that one down to a bad job, I think, and we'll carry on with the rest of the stalk up the wind. But obviously with ground where, I've not stalked this ground on foot. I've walked it and I've shot from high seas, but familiarity with the ground that you're stalking on is obviously quite important, and it's a bit of a beginner's mistake.
As we move into the field, there are pheasants everywhere. Dom decides to cross the middle of the field to avoid treading on a noisy bird every 5 yards. As backup, Mr. Gilchrist joins us and heads to a separate high seat. We get set up in ours. The view from the seat is fantastic, one of the best Dom's been in. We see some early wildlife, but again the deer are not showing themselves until late. A problem if they've been hit hard. Eventually some fallow appear in the far corner, but it's not ideal.
So we've got a fallow just come out on the very edge of the field. He's just a couple of yards out from the hedgerow, and although I can see with the binoculars, because I'm left-handed, I can't get in a position to shoot it. If it was the other side, not a problem. So we're just going to wait, and hopefully it'll graze out into the field a little bit, which should give me a better angle. But knowing my luck recently, probably not.
We spot a buck on the brow of the field. His silhouette confirms he's a buck. But this chap is not going to make life easy either, with no backstop. Frustratingly, he saunters along the horizon, never with any earth behind him. Mark also leaves his high seat empty-handed, but the night is still young. As Dom heads off saying something about putting a magazine together, Mark becomes incredible shooter Andy Crow's wingman as they head off after another abuser of crops, rabbits. Mark is letting Andy have a play with his new setup, a Browning 17 HMR with a Swarovski scope.
Yeah, we've got a Swarovski ZI6, so it's got a luminous reticle. You can make it brighter and dimmer as you go along, or have it switched off. I've used it off the last 10-15 minutes. Parallax adjustable. It's got ballistic turrets, so obviously if you've got a 308 or something with a big drop in it, you can zero it at 100, 200 and 300 yards, so you can move the dial around. Obviously on a 17 it's flat shooting, so we haven't done that. And we've got a Browning T-bolt It's got two 10-shot mags, which is obviously makes things easier if you're in a bit of a hurry. Accurate out to 100, 120 yards. Very sweet shooting rifle. We've got Hornady ammo through this rifle, that's what it liked. And we're away killing rabbits.
You do this as a profession, really, so you know, is it something you would quite happily take that unit out and use it and abuse it?
Yeah, I'd definitely use this, especially when you get to January, February time and your rabbits won't sit any closer than 80, 90 yards. You almost have to have one of these. Make sure you get your truck or buggy, whatever it is, kitted out like this so you can rest your elbow. And if you can't get a steady rest, there's no point being able to shoot out to 100 yards if you're not steady. The other thing you'll need is a really decent scope, because obviously the cheaper scopes don't give you the clarity out at range.
I was going to say about the scopes, because the more expensive the glassware, it usually gives you the sort of extra time at the end of the day with your stalking or whatever. But when you're lamping, obviously you've got the beam kicking out there. I mean, what difference does that make with a decent scope?
I prefer decent scopes on my rifles because you can use a dimmer lamp. Too many people use far too bright a lamp, which scares the rabbits. You can use a dimmer one, they can't see it. Even if you've got a red filter on, they will still have some element of white light which they can see. They can't see red, but they can see white. So have it as dim as possible and put some money into your scope and get a better quality scope, and you can see the rabbit just as clearly with a better scope and lower light.
As with many farmers, rabbit control is an integral part of Andy's life. For him, it makes financial sense.
It's a job, really. I have to do it because the rabbit's eating the corn, so it is a job. It's a job I enjoy doing, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it does. The rabbits I shoot, it pays for my pigeon shooting, because the cartridges, pigeons I get 20 pence each for, and the cartridge is about 25, 26p, so that's why the rabbits pay for the pigeon shooting. But when I'm shooting as few as this at a time, it's not paying for the pigeon shooting. So, but the deer help out as well. So
it's a balancing act, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
This evening's operation involves Mark lighting the way, Andy clearing the way, and Andy's son, also called Andy, tidying away. Many rabbit controllers use a 2.2, but both Mark and Andy think the 1.7 HMR is best for this sort of shooting, even though the ammo is more expensive.
Mark uses a 2.2 most of the time for rabbits. I used to use 2.2 all the time. We used to keep on top, well, we never used to keep right on top of the rabbits, we used to struggle a bit. But then everyone said, I'll get a 1.7, got a 1.7, and that's the reason we haven't got many rabbits. You can get to within 70, 80 yards and they start to run, but with this you can shoot them out to 100 yards comfortable. If they're on the crops, I'll shoot them anywhere. With the 1.7 you can shoot them anywhere, from the midway up front. They're not going anywhere, you're going to kill them. To me the 1.7 is just bad news for a rabbit, but good news for me.
The farm is not overrun with rabbits, but Andy has to keep on top of them, going out a couple of times a week. Mark is an experienced rabbit shooter, but he and Andy are always learning.
I love being out rabbiting. I like seeing how other people do it. I think the worst thing you can do is have your own methods, even if they're successful, and not listen to how other people do it and see how they do it. I normally shoot 2.2 and night vision, but there are times when that won't work, so you need to go back over to 1.7 and lamps.
We've been out for a couple of hours and we've got 40 plus rabbits. The guys clean them before we get back to the yard. Mark fires up the chiller and the rabbits are stacked in trays ready for the game dealer. It won't be long before the next delivery. These animals have a habit of reappearing even when pursued by quality shots. Next up, love is in the air as Roy Lupton gets his eagles and ferrets feeling frisky.
With Cappy, he is one of my main hunting eagles, and I've been working with him for about 15 years now. And he was fully parent reared. But the interesting thing with the eagles, and some of the other birds do it as well, is that even though he's parent reared, you build up such a bond with them, and you're working with them for, so closely for such a long period of time, that they actually in the end class you as their partner. And as you can hear there, out there at the moment, he's calling for me to go in there so we can make a nest together and start copulation.
You said all that with a straight face.
I know, it's good, isn't it? Terrible. No, that's it. I mean, I suppose it's a bit odd for people looking in on it, but it's a way of artificially propagating birds of prey without the inherent risks that you can have with doing it naturally. There's always a risk when you're breeding birds of prey that one or the other of the birds of the pair can get damaged. Especially with eagles, they can get a little bit stroppy as they're coming into condition. So it's a nicer way of doing it artificially, because then you're not risking any damage through the birds getting a little bit excited or coming out of condition. So that way it's you can get the same result, but with none of the risk, hopefully.
Didn't work today then.
No, he jumped on there and thought about it, but he was definitely put off by the camera there. So yeah, obviously a private lover. So with the ferrets at the moment, obviously it's that love time of year, as we've just been out with the birds and what have you. And all I'm doing at the moment is I'm just lining certain gills that I want to take litters from. So with the certain males, just to get the characteristics of the ferrets that I want. So she was mated a little while ago. So she's impregnated. We're just waiting for her to come through now. Again, I mean, this one is an average sized gill. She's nothing too large and nothing too small. But these are they're a very nice working ferret. But the ones as we saw when we were out ferreting the other week, the ones that I'm really concentrating on breeding, and these ones you've got to make sure that you only use the right males, the right females are the dinky ones. So you can see there he is. Those are real dinky little things. We'll grab them out so we can have a closer look, and then you can have a spy of them properly. Hello, pugs. Pug. Come on. Yep. Hello. Right, there we go. So we've got Jill and Hob. I mean, you can see, just for size-wise, I mean, these guys are absolutely weeny. So you can see there, I mean, a lot of people don't believe, with these guys, hang on a second, he's definitely a bit lively. A lot of people don't believe that that's a fully grown ferret, but you can see there, he is 100% a fully grown male, but a little tiny one. I'm definitely getting a bit excited. And then we've got the Jill just there. So these really are dinky little things. I mean, these are the smallest ferrets I've ever managed to breed and managed to come across. But this is just generation after generation of breeding them and selecting the characteristics that you want.
Remind me again, why? What's the point in getting them so small?
The reason for having them so small like this is because, one, you can use them as a ratting ferret. They're really good for ratting, and the other thing is, if you're using them and you're netting, then they're absolutely superb for going in and out of the holes through the nets without pulling the nets down the hole, so you're not having to constantly reset them. So these really are a fantastic little working ferret for nets. With ferrets, then we always try and mate the females either with a vasectomised hob, or if you're going to breed from them, with a hob that's completely entire. The reason we do that is the gills, if they're not mated, can become infected, and then that causes all sorts of problems. You can get a jab, an injection, which brings them out of season, and prevents them from getting infected. But you can see they can, if they stay swollen out for too long, then that does tend to cause problems for them. So we always try and get them mated, as I say, either with a vasectomised hob or an entire male if we want to take a litter from them. I have heard stories about people using small glass rods and whatever to stimulate the Jill into thinking that she's been mated, but it's a damn sight easier using a vasectomised hob. Saves messing about with ferret bits.
You've got enough bits to play around with anyway.
Yeah, that's it. No, it's definitely sexy time of year at the moment. The reason I breed mainly albino ferrets is because most of the time we're using the ferrets in conjunction with birds, and if you've got polecats or some of the coloured ferrets, then the hawks can get mistaken sometimes if a ferret's running through the bush or whatever else, just emerge from a hole and mistake it for something to chase and to catch. So if you're using albino ferrets all the time, it takes away that risk, really.
Now, that most British of great British places, Blenheim Palace, where we're going fishing. Spring is finally here, so it is ho for the open road, and what better for the urban man than a stroll by the lake or a walk in the park that surrounds the country house, even a picnic with a family by the water. But what's this? A man with a new rod. And why, isn't that a fisherman under the bridge casting a speculative fly? What is going on today?
The purpose of the day really is to encourage people to come along and have a go at fly fishing. Fly fishing can appear rather complicated and not particularly easy to access. People can come along today, they can pick up a fly rod, they can have some very basic instruction, understand how it works.
Once this line unrolls, I'm going to count how long it actually takes to fall to the ground. 1, 2.
Paul and his fellow instructors are on hand to demonstrate technique.
Was really looking at loops in fly casting. Principally, often you see demonstrations, and it's easy to, as a casting instructor, talk about tight loops all the time. So we've got quite a mixed audience here today. I think we've got quite a lot of families, perhaps people have come along who are outside fly fishing. What I really wanted to demonstrate today was to show people that how simple fly casting can be, stripping it down to its bare bones, if you like, and talking about what a loop is and how a loop is formed, and where they might find various loops, for example, an open loop or a tight loop, where they might use those loops in fly casting.
We're here really to explain actually how easy it is. It gives the impression of being very complicated, lots of gadgets and gizmos and accessories, but in essence fly fishing is very simple. You have an artificial fly made out of fur and feather, you have a reel, a fly line, a rod, a few accessories and a landing net, and you're free to go. It's very, very simple in many respects.
Once you get back to basics, it's very simple, and yes, it's really encouraging people to say, once I've got these points laid out in front of me, these prompts, I can achieve that quite easily.
Want to load up quicker, don't lift it from the tip end. The potential to risk break a lot more than...
But isn't fly fishing ever so slightly exclusive and elitist?
You know, I think attitudes are changing, and I think 20 or 30 years ago that was the case. It was really, you know, the sport of the landed gentry. But we're in a different world now. Fly fishing is accessible to everyone. You can go into a fly fishing tackle shop and buy a very, very good fly fishing outfit for probably £100–150.
So you want to take up this most elegant of sports. How and where do you start?
I learnt the hard way, if you like. I was self-taught for many years, and therein creep many sort of faults.
Today there is an opportunity to learn the basics.
We do have demonstrations on the very basics, you know, how to approach fishing safely, the basics of putting a rod outfit together, basic overhead cast, basic roll cast, and some basic presentational techniques. And then we do cover some of the more advanced casting, the more advanced spey casts, double haul techniques, how to control the diameter of a loop and cope with casting into strong winds. We do all of that as well. But that's not really the focus of today. The focus of the day is to make it fun, and to enable people to come, somebody who's never fly fished in their life before, to come, have a go, just pick up a few tips, pick up the basic overhead cast, and go away with enough information to be able to take up the sport.
Over the next few months, there is a chance to take free fly fishing lessons with Orvis. And the chance of catching a fish at Blenheim?
I haven't fished it. I've had an invite to fish it, and I suppose it would be rude not to take that invite up at some point. But I understand, I was talking to the keeper earlier, it is a well-stocked lake. Right now, looking at these conditions, lovely day to be running an event, but not the ideal day you would choose for fishing, of course. But yeah, it's a well-stocked water.
The fishery was born 2 years ago now, 2 years last week, so it's still very young. It was something that I'd thought about for many years, and also Lord Blanford had mentioned it, and a friend of mine came up and did all the levels for oxygen, dissolved oxygen, and told me that trout would survive in the lake unless we had extreme weather in the summers. So we worked on that. We bought an aerator, electrofished the lake for the pike, which means just sourcing, electrofishing it, and taking only the one species we needed to take out, and we put those up into the main lake for the coarse fishery. And then we stocked it last year, and it's just grown steadily since. The main lake is 100 acres, of which about 60 acres would be coarse fished. This lake itself is actually the River Glyme. Although it's classed as a still water, there is quite a current on it. Blenheim Palace in itself is somewhere that people like to come. We're getting 1 or 2 fishermen a day now. Last year it was 1 or 2 fishermen a week. I think it takes, like with all things, it takes a long time to draw someone away from their favourite spot.
It is also the destination for thousands of fishermen who will be congregating here in July for the CLA Game Fair. Paul and his fellow instructors will be on hand.
If they're looking for tackle, obviously at the Game Fair it's an ideal place for all manufacturers and retailers to display their wares, and people often come along with a shopping list, so I suppose my brief to some degree is just helping people select the right piece of kit, and that isn't necessarily always the most expensive. You've got to look at budget, but you advise people, and hopefully once they've bought into that, you can go and show them some nice little tips that will further their fly casting or fishing experience, if you like.
To learn more about free beginners fly fishing, have a look at www.orvis.co.uk/stores.
And that's been Field Sports Britain for another exciting episode this week. I'm Mark Gilchrist. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sorry that they've been putting me off.